Obviously, a tremendous pleasure to be here to discuss this. This is in a very real sense, the natural home for the hat and the specter, and this is kind of, in that way, maybe a homecoming. So I want to, of course, I'm Chaim Goodman-Strauss. I work at the National Museum of Mathematics, and this is, I would say, normally joint work, but of course, it's really Dave Smith's discovery, and we're fellow travelers, Craig Kaplan and Joseph Myers. And let me just take a quick moment to kind of pitch a couple of things. So this is kind of, in part, just to put myself on the hook for doing this. So the Symmetries of Things came out 15, 16 years ago with John H. Conway. And despite the absence of the senior author, we're moving forward with a new abridged edition, which will be basically on the magic theorem. So it'll be basically the first part of the book only on explaining. And now actually Conway, you know, was not a modest man, obviously. and yet, he did not call it this. He had enough, he really respected very deeply that this was based on ideas of Bill Thurston and was very modest, in fact, in his accomplishment here. But we will very proudly call it Conway's Magic Theorem because it is. And let me just say, it's the modern, it's the powerful, useful way to understand symmetries of the plane, sphere, and hyperbolic plane. I don't mean that as an overstatement. I really believe very strongly in that. And so just the fundamental idea is that you should know symmetries by their orbifolds. And this isn't that talk, but just how when you have a pattern, you can wrap things up and look at a surface that's associated with it. And I just like to, Carolyn made this beautiful example of a Mobius band orbifold, which I really like. So thanks. That's what it's going to look like, Carolyn, in the book. And then I'd also like to sort of say, too, that in the new edition, there'll be a whole lot of educational activities with a real emphasis on things that can be done in the classroom or wherever, or just for yourself. And so one of these that I did a couple of years ago is called Tutti Tutti, and I won't go into that, except I will just say that, this is something that won the Rosenthal Prize down here, and I'll say something a bit about that. So this is something that's open for all of you. In fact, this is the right people. You are the people to submit to the Rosenthal. There's the QR code, and really you're needed. I mean, this is right in the spirit of what Martin Gardner wrote about so eloquently, so often, the need for puzzles and games and engagement to really show kids a deeper side of things, especially now. And so with that, I would like to say I've been reflecting a lot about this. I mean, this is, it's sort of, I'm here not as the discoverer of the hat, but as a representative, so to speak, of the team of the hat. It's interesting being in that position because it sort of also represents that people are not here. Certain people are not here. And so I, like many of you, probably almost all of you learned about Penrose tiles from Martin Gardner and was subsequently I was inspired enough to make it part of my career. And, you know, as images like this that Sir Roger showed us yesterday, I mean, that's just great, right? And so I was about, 14 or so when this came out. And I guess this is a little intimate. This is sort of an intimate, quiet little gathering of friends. So I'll share this that actually, I don't think it'll surprise you that I was sometimes in detention for being a smart mouth. And so, and luckily I had a big stack of Scientific Americans and Martin Gardner. And that's really actually at least my memory of where I saw this first, which is kind of funny, isn't it? Anyway, so, and then of course this. So I think we know what we're talking, that this thing is the aperiodic monotile. And in fact, it's one of a continuum of such, which we'll discuss. And then of the specter. But I really want to say that this is the discoverer. So this is Dave Smith, and he is not an academic mathematician. And here are collaborators, Craig Kaplan and Joseph Myers. If you want to get on the tiling listserv, which was kind of instrumental in us meeting each other and in making connections between academic and non-academic researchers, I mean, this was the whole purpose, really, of the tiling listserv was, in fact, to create this common space where we could share ideas, and worked out spectacularly. Anyway, if you're interested, please contact Casey Mann at this email address. So, in any case, so what's the big deal? I just want to quickly share what the point is in case you somehow missed it. So the question is, what is, but there's actually a lot of deeper stuff that you may not realize that goes right back to the beginning of the subject. So what is, the question is, okay, can you make copies of that? Can they form a tiling with, okay, I know that you're all intelligent people. I'm not meaning to say that it's not a completely obvious question, but the question itself, right, is can we take this shape and can we fit it together without gaps or overlaps? And I think, obviously you know the answer to that one. So, but, okay, well, what about this one? Yay or nay? Nay. And what's the proof? Yeah, the point. What are you going to do with the point? Right. So something like the point. You stick the point in there, and that's too bad. And so we use the definition, the word monotile, which has not been a common word until about 12 months ago, is, seriously, I never used the word myself, I don't think, until 12 months ago. So can this shape be used to form copies, be used to form a tiling? And most particularly, how can we tell? And in some cases, we can tell pretty well. So this is another example that's due to Casey Mann from 2006. And it's not so obvious, but you can check it out. This is about what it can do. And notice that it can form one central tile can be surrounded 3 full times, and then you kind of can't really get much more in there. And the reason that it can't really continue is that this is actually made up of hexagons with little ins and outs. So these are ins and these are outs. And in the actual tiling, those ins and outs have to match. But then there's more ins than outs, so eventually there's too many ins to be balanced. And in fact, if you think about it, the number of tiles grows up by the square, that is to say the imbalance grows up by the square of this radius, but this length grows roughly proportionally to this radius. So soon any quadratic is eventually going to beat any linear function, and so that's why we run out of room here. So that's understandable at least. But then this kind of thing, this is the world record currently from 2021, and I have some samples of stuff like this if you want to play with it. This has 6, and the same reasoning shows that it will crash, but why does it crash then and there? There's not really any real reason. I mean, that's actually a really important point. So what is a reason? There's sort of human reason, and then there's mathematical formal reasoning, right? And they're not actually the same thing. So there's a formal proof that that's correct, but it's roughly in the form of a lengthy computer program that would be impossibly tedious to figure out, to actually check by hand. And so we would check it with another computer program. So this is called the Heesch number. And the question here is are Heesch numbers unbounded? This is an open question that goes quite a ways back. So this one has 6 concentric rings. If I give you some n, like 100, is there a tile that can tile for 100 steps, or maybe more than 100 steps, 100 rings, and then crash, and then no further? And that's a remarkable question. Similarly, this one, which is by Joseph Myers, the same Joseph Myers of the hat tile team, from 2003, how can we tell? How could you tell if this tile's the plane? And in fact, this is an awful, awful example, because this is the simplest thing it can do. It can tile periodically, but this is the simplest periodic tiling it can form. That is to say, the smallest so-called fundamental domain, you can swap pieces in and out of it, but it's going to have 10 different tiles. And so this is called isohedral number, and it has isohedral number 10, and we want to know, is isohedral number bounded? That'd be also interesting to know. And here's another record. These two are the records. This is isohedral number 9, also from the same search. And I think it's worth noting, this is just a quick little snapshot from Joseph's webpage that literally, look at that. Like, well, how many decimal, what power of 10 is that? Like trillions of examples have been checked. And what I just showed you was the most interesting to date, prior to the hat, out of trillions. So you see these tremendous numbers going up, and actually nothing turns up. And it really raises the question, I mean, is it actually possible to do arbitrary complexity? By the way, if you want a link to Joseph's website, that's what it is. So just how could you manage to do this? How could you decide if you could form copies of a shape to form a tiling, you just make larger and larger patches. And if you run out of patches, then you know it can't tile the plane. Because contrapositively, if you could tile the, let's see, if you can make larger and larger patches, you can eventually tile the plane. That sounds obvious. It's not quite as obvious as it sounds, but it sounds obvious. And then on the other hand, so then the other way around is that if you can't tile the plane, you'll eventually run out of sizes of patches, and that's something you can check. So similarly, just to remind you, a tile is aperiodic, means that it can form tilings, but never periodic tilings. And the flip side of this is that if we didn't have an aperiodic monotile, this would give us a procedure for sure to determine whether or not a given tile can tile the plane. What you do is you start enumerating patches larger and larger, and then you either find a patch that is, either you run out of patches or you find a patch that can be used for a periodic tiling like the one I just showed you. And so we have this kind of interesting set of implications. And these generalize like crazy. This is just the case for this one setting. So if there's no possible procedure, that would imply, for example, that the Heesch number is bounded. Or to flip this around, if the Heesch number were bounded, we would have definitely a procedure to determine. And these are the kinds of open questions that have been around. Those remain open, and now we know that. And then something, I'll just move ahead. So how does this magic work? And I just want to sketch this in general. So L tilings, to take an example, they can form periodic tilings, but they can also form non-periodic ones in the following way with a substitution rule. And the way these work is you saw each L became replaced by a larger L still, and so on. And in ad infinitum in this way, in a way that's less obvious than it sounds, but you can believe that we could grow infinite tilings of the plane. And in each tile would then lie in a unique hierarchy of larger and larger copies of the same L tile, which I think goes this way. And so why would this be non-periodic? These structures are non-periodic because you can recover the hierarchical structure exactly. So, for example, given this picture, it looks periodic, right? It looks like if you let your eyes glaze over, everything seems to line up, but it doesn't because you can recover these lines uniquely. These are well defined how the tiles clump into super tiles. And then, in addition to that, if I had any translation, then there's going to be some super tile bigger than that translation that's going to have to land on top of itself. But that's a contradiction. You can see some problems over here, but the contradiction is this. This particular tile, say, or this one or something, lies in a unique super tile of a given that level. It's supposed to, but it doesn't. Ergo, it's a contradiction. So this is the heart of the argument, the kinds of argument that goes back over 60 years now that Martin Gardner popularized in his column. So tilings of this kind are necessarily non-periodic, which can be hard to believe. Let me see if I can catch it. Like there, pretty much everything lines up, right? But not everything. And in fact, you can make arbitrarily much of this line up, but not everything. That may be the first frame, I don't know. So, okay. But the L tile is not aperiodic, but you can, by some magic, these guys can force the same sort of structure to emerge. And so they can, by some magic, and it really is magic, these guys can only form the same kind of hierarchical structure that the L tiles form. So these two are aperiodic. Now the whole thing about the hat, though, is that it is much simpler than this. This is just sort of what the state of the art kind of looked like a year ago. Anyway, we basically show that they must do that. And then we have all these examples, like, of course, you know the Penrose tiles. You might know Amon's examples, many examples. And you might have heard that in 2009, there was this example with Joan Taylor and Josh Sokolar, that this is an aperiodic monotile. But the problem here, this was starting to be a little fishy, because the rules here require that you're going to fit these together, and the rule requires that this marking has to match that marking. It has to skip over a little bit. And so was that legit? Maybe. But it's certainly fishy, right? It's certainly a layer of something additional that we have to worry about. And there's a lot of other kinds of examples in the history of monotiles that sort of one idea or another, but none of them quite really seem to exactly what we wanted. So we could either say the tile's not connected, or maybe you could just say that the rules are more complicated, or maybe you get around this by saying the tiles are in 2 layers. There's a lot of ways out. But it's not, what it definitely is not, is a simple unmarked polygon, or something that can be encoded just by shape or rules that at least are adjacent. Here's another example, which is also very recent from Walton and Whitaker, which is very simple. It's almost the same kind of structure, but it has much more complicated rules. These, again, cannot be encoded by a simple shape. I don't even quite know what they are. They're something like the arrow. It's some, anyway, you get the point. Just that I can't even tell you is it's sign of. So, and so then we, of course, come to this question, which I think we all fully anticipated, is can a single unmarked shape suffice? And is there an aperiodic monotile? And we didn't know. And I'd like to say something about this. So is there an Einstein? I would like to apologize, in a certain sense, for all of that. You know, the hat on Einstein's head and stuff. And it was very kind of, on some level, very crass and cynical but it was Ludwig Donzer. Those of you who know Ludwig Donzer, he did that on purpose. He really did. But he didn't know how big it would get. But in the 90s, he was a German speaker, so it's his pun. It's okay. He can do puns in German. It's one stone, which he could say one shape. And he thought that if it ever happened, then it would give notoriety and celebrity to the problem. And he was right. So it was cheap and crass and successful and worked, so whatever. Okay. So anyway, there's Dave Smith again. He discovered this, and then he contacted Craig. They contacted me. We contacted Joseph. And, there's the listserv thing. So there's the listserv email address. And the listserv was very important. And I guess I should just say in a moment that one question about, is Dave what kind of mathematician is Dave? Dave's a mathematician. That's what kind of mathematician he is. I think that the question of could an academic, what's this relationship between academic and non-academic mathematics? I think it's really striking that many of the most important and interesting discoveries in this area were made by people outside of academia. I think the more I think about it, the more I insist that it was necessarily so. Those of you in academia know that it would be at the height of foolishness to be pursuing a problem like this with any kind of expectation of it paying out, whereas Dave just loved it, right? So, sobering thought. Anyway, then Dave sent Craig the tiles, and Craig quickly, so Joseph and Craig, our secret weapon was that they both had particular bespoke pieces of software that could do different things. So Joseph could check for periodic tilings with large fundamental domains, and Craig was able to generate large patches, just period. And so between them, they could check things. Craig could check for high Heesch numbers, and Joseph can check for isohedral numbers. That's really the part of the team. I mean, we all kind of came to it with our own little powers, I guess, and that was a big part of what was absolutely instrumental. So Craig was able to generate this patch, and then he's staring at it, and what do you see? Do you see any structure there? Well, I don't. After a while, they saw this, which you've probably seen, and so then we're off to the races. And so the idea was, this is one idea. There's actually been now several, and I think several people, I think that we'll be going to gatherings for Gardner for decades, hearing more and more about the hat tile. But here's the first attempt to understand what was going on, was this, using this as the hierarchical structure, where the hats, by magic really, can only be clustered into these particular groupings. And then, now what magic am I talking about? I'm talking about a lengthy computer search of all possible local configurations, like a tedious, like not a human scale search. And I mean, it is human scale. It'd just be really, really tedious. It's not like you couldn't do it, like some tasks, but just that you wouldn't want to do it. So, but nonetheless, so that by some essentially combinatorial magic, this is all they can do. And then those in turn have this hierarchical structure. Now, if you think about it, this is really kind of amazing. Those of you who've ever really thought a lot about aperiodic tiles know, or sets of tiles know, or have experienced that you have these complicated ways of thinking about signaling and things, controlling. I don't know. It's just, this is totally ad hoc. There is no fundamental reason except that it is, which I think is really striking. And so, at least that we understand at the moment. So in any case, for whatever reason, somehow those rules are able to enforce somehow it's able to enforce that structure without any additional thing. And then moreover, there's other rules which work just fine. And they're really strikingly different. So this is one by Yoshi Arakai and Akiyama, and this I think might be the right one. So this one really looks like something, there's actually a lot of structure there that looks a lot more regular and more compellingly right somehow. So, and then I think you might know that David, in fact, produced, soon we realized there was a continuum of possibilities. And that led to a new style of proof, which I won't go into yet here, but basically that in that continuum, one can sort of line up two incompatible triangular lattices. That's pretty far out. And so it's actually a new method for showing a tile is aperiodic. And then, of course, all hell broke loose. So then that's where we were on March 19th of 2023. And then on March 21st, it's just like crazy. And I think you all saw this. And I think like on a personal level, that's just amusing. I don't feel, it's cool. But I think on a level of somebody who cares about this subject, who cares about, who's been interested in this for a long time and really cares about people getting it right and would like to sort of people to know about this, it's like beyond phenomenal, right? Just to get the right definition of aperiodicity in newspapers all over the world about 80% of the time was pretty fantastic, right? So, anyway. And then, of course, this was phenomenal. I don't know if Siobhan's here today. She thought she might come in. And so that was pretty far out. And then, of course, all of this madness. And then, of course, Rob Fattauer produced, we all know it looks like shirts. It turns out that Craig and Dave knew it looked like a shirt even before they contacted me and decided to call it a hat, so whatever. And then, of course, all this nonsense. So is it one tile or multiple tiles? And I think the answer is, how many different shapes do you see? I mean, and I've been showing you reflected tiles all along, and nobody ever complained. It's a matter of the literature. So in physics, in physical reality, it matters a great deal. You care about which shoe you're on, you have on your feet. But I'll take this as my authority. This is side angle side. And if that doesn't seem authoritative enough, there you go. There it's in green. So, of course, the specter came to what nobody knew except us is that and again, so Dave, this is really the real mathematical thing. So Dave was the one who had the insight that there was the right thing to do. The specter had enough flexibility, so pull back and look at it without reflections. And soon, of course, we had this. So this is Rob Fattauer again. Let's talk about Escherization. Yoshi Arakai did tons of these wonderful things. And here you can actually see the substitution rule for the specter showing exactly how to build larger and larger patches. So we had all kinds of tremendous stuff. I think these are my favorites in some sense, just because they're sort of, tattoos and beer. It's great. And but one of the things that came out of this was that MoMath and the UK Maths Trust sponsored this contest, or rather we did it, and all these donors donated a lot of money to this thing, and that was really amazing. So we had these. I'd just like to show you a few of the entries really quickly. So this was one of the winners. We liked it a lot, and this was great. This is a kite, a hat made out into a kite, made out of hats, hang on a sec. So this is a hat made into a kite. the kite made from a hat, made of kites, made of hats, and of course the hats are made of kites. Okay. And then it flies. And then this is Shi Yingdong, who's here. If you have not met her, she's here. She does the beautiful crochet, topological crochet upstairs. And then this was the article that Siobhan, we kept Siobhan busy last year for sure. So here she did another one. And I'd like to just spend 3 minutes showing you what you could do with an Einstein. So these are different things that came through. Kids could have fun. We got a lot of hats. We got a lot of fabric work. This one is just so darling. This is Grana's Math Dollhouse. I think the level of craftsmanship is just right on. I mean, honestly, it's just so charming. And then we can enjoy some food. Isn't that sweet? And then, again, different levels of craftsmanship. And lots of cookies. God, so many cookies. But this person at least had turtles on top and hats on the bottom. And this was wonderful. This was a beautiful one of the finalists. And then some things looked better than others. And this was the winner. We had so many quilts, beautiful quilts, so lovely, and other work. You can wear something. So Scott, that's here. And other things. Here's another and more, and that's fun. And this one's nice. This is a child's entry, and it's nice because this structure is important in the proof. So I'm not sure if she knew that or just was responding aesthetically. Or around the house, we got that cool stuff. These are cute. Lots of inlay, beautiful stuff. This is hand-painted, which is really far out. And then lots of inlay. And this is made with volunteers at this interesting place. And then, of course, we already saw a bunch of illustration, but just a few more things. This is really amazing, Ellie Baker. And more. These are hand-painted. And then lots and lots of art. And somebody yesterday was asking about a relationship between Islamic art, or Islamic geometry, and the hat. Well, I don't know. I mean, certainly it draws inspiration. I think many of us feel part of a deep continuity of some kind. And so I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to race through these. But this is another one. Anne, are you here? There you are. Yeah, so this is a hex. I haven't actually seen this in live, so I don't know how it works. But so you'll have to show me. And then this is also here. Yossi showed us this yesterday, I believe. And, oh man, I'm not going to get $1. But I'm going to get through here. So this is another one. There's a theorem that you can cut any shape out of a single cut. So somebody did that. Okay, I want to get through. There's all sorts of stuff. We saw lots of puzzles, but lots of people using this as a thing to stick together. Lots of interesting games. This one was a. Wait. I don't know. This one. No. You don't even know the joke. This one. All the names over there are judges of the contest. So we don't even know what this is about. So Allie's. And then lots of amazing stuff. This is a kid thing, another kid thing. So there's somebody doing game of life type stuff. Oh, I'm out of time, so that's it. I just want to say one last thing. This is pretty cool, and that's where I'll stop. So I'm too old to have gotten that joke until it was explained to me. If you don't get it, ask a young person. I'll see you later.